All this time, the woman, in her patience, has worked the textile on her lap, kept the fire alive, and tended the food in the ancestral pot. She is so old, it takes her a long time to rise and walk over to the fire. When she is standing with her back turned, the black dog goes to where she was weaving and unravels the work from her cloth. And so, while time passes, she never makes progress, and her quill work remains forever undone. The Sioux people used to say that if the work of the woman ever ends, at the very moment the last quill is used to complete the image and the cloth is finished, the world will come to an end somewhere. So one of the things that became very interesting to us as we started to look at this is how when you make it alphabetical, it becomes something else, but yet it carries its narrative. And how this might weave together with other histories, the Gombrich, which I described, and the next one, which is actually a very recent book, Stories of Almost Everyone, which was actually just published this year. And it doesn't tell a story from the beginning of time. It's not chronologic in its telling. It's more episodic and more poetic. And what I've done actually for today is actually, and what some of you have in your hands, you have excerpts from these 3 books. And so I wanted to kind of do an experiment with this reading. And rather than be up here at the microphone, I wanted to maybe enact on this page a selection process that's a little bit like what happens when you're in the stacks, and a little bit what happens when when you read and remark on particular words because of your own history of reading. So, yeah, what I want to ask all of you to do is actually take out a pen, and if you don't have any, Jamie has some. Yeah. You guys are all really quiet. Is it because we're in the library, or is it's the microphone? Because I'm in the microphone. One of the things, I'm just going to, actually, I want to read you one of the things that came up. When we did, you can also search with, when we get the pens handed out, you have to do this, Cormac. It's like you can search phrases, too, and so, like, some of the books, like, well, we searched the word alive, and this is all from the Galliano book, and Jamie and I were looking at this, and she was like, why, it's interesting, the word alive, because it's every use of it in this book has to do with death. So this is what came up. More dead than alive, burned alive, roast him alive. I prefer to carry on alive, not a Jew alive, burned him alive, being eaten alive, and being skinned alive, left alive, you won't get out alive, and on and on. So it's a really interesting way also when you start comparing texts to look at the habits of language and address. So in the Gombrich book, there's the phrase that recurs again and again that says, at the end, at the end. And one of the books I didn't use but considered for this, which is a memoir of Chief Plentycoo, who was head of the Crow Nation and wrote this really kind of extraordinary story because his chief, his tenure as chief really negotiated that joint between living traditional lifestyle, negotiating with the U.S. government, and living in reservation. And his book was full of, in the beginning. So it's like the texts revealed themselves through this process to us in different ways. And that actually is maybe has some relationship to how we all read. We all read with different emphasis. So what I wanted to do is actually ask each of you to look at the page that you have. Some of you have something from Galliano. Some of you have something from the Gombrich, and some of you have the Sioux story. And I wanted you to underline a word, a small phrase, a fragment of a sentence, not probably a whole sentence, but just those pieces of language. Can you say that? Pieces of language? Yeah. Those pieces of language, those objects that kind of come forward from the page, and underline them or circle them. So, because what we're going to do is we're going to read through, and we're going to read through reading only those selections out loud. And so we're going to become this kind of reading concordance. And I think what we're going to do is maybe try to get everybody more into the center over here, get you off of your chairs over here and bring you together. And we're just going to go around the room and follow the pattern of language that's created by the pattern of our selections. Jamie and I, while you do that, are going to read a little bit from the concordance of the Sioux story. So what we did is we took that story and we made a concordance of it, which means that it has these rhythmic repetitions that become, I think, quite beautiful and something else potentially as they're read out loud. Should we do that? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do one line and you do the other. Should we just share this? Okay. So can you do two things at once? Can you read and listen? Can you mark and read and listen? Let's do this, and then how's our time, Nancy? We have 20 minutes. Perfect. Okay. So this is from the Sioux. End of the world. Somewhere in a place where the land and the mountains meet, there is a deep and hidden cave. People have...
World, White River Sioux. Somewhere in a place where the land and the mountains meet, there is a deep and hidden cave. People have searched for a long, long time, but no one has ever...
The land and the mountains meet, there is a deep and hidden cave. People have searched for a long, long time, but no one has ever discovered its location. In the cave lives an old...
The cave lives an old woman dressed in animal skins, whose face is dry and worn. For 1,000 years or more, she has been sitting, the way our ancestors did, making a piece of...
Worn. For 1,000 years or more, she has been sitting, the way our ancestors did, making a piece of cloth out of dyed porcupine quills for a buffalo robe. Resting beside her, watching, is a...
Been sitting, the way our ancestors did, making a piece of cloth out of dyed porcupine quills for a buffalo robe. Resting beside her, watching, is a black dog. His eyes never wander from the...
A piece of cloth out of dyed porcupine quills. Did you just read this one? Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. Resting beside her, watching, is a black dog. His eyes never wander from the old woman. He is her only companion. A few...
Is a black dog. His eyes never wander from the old woman. He is her only companion. A few steps from where she sits, burns a fire that began before memories were recorded. Over the...
From the old woman. He is her only companion. A few steps from where she sits burns a fire that began before memories were recorded. Over the fire hangs a pot, the kind made with...
From where she sits burns a fire that began before memories were recorded. Over the fire hangs a pot, the kind made with clay from the earth and used before the white man arrived with...
Fire, alive, and tended the food in the ancestral pot. She is so old it takes her a long time to rise and walk over to the fire. When she is standing with her back...
This time the woman in her patience has worked the textile on her lap, kept the fire alive, and tended the food in the ancestral pot. She is so old it takes her a long...
Sweet and red, the meal has been cooked steadily for as long as the fire has burned. All this time the woman in her patience has worked the textile on her lap, kept the fire...
For a long, long time, but no one has ever discovered its location. In the cave lives an old woman, dressed in animal skins, whose face is dry and worn. For 1,000 years or...
Quill is used to complete the image and the cloth is finished. The world will come to an end somewhere. So those are just three of the words in concordance. It's a, alive, all, and an. And it's all of the occurrences of those words in the text. another list, which is generated, is this alphabetic one. And it's interesting just to, I think, hear, maybe. Do you want to read that? Maybe just a section.
Just tell me when to stop. Yeah. Let's keep going. A, alive, all, an, ancestors, ancestral, and animal arrived as at, back, been, before, began, beside, black, boiling, buffalo, burned, burns but cave, clay, cloth, come, companion, complete, cooking, deep, did discover, dog, dressed, dry, died, earth, end, ends, ever, eyes, face, few, finished, fire, food, for, forever, from, goes, good, hangs, has, have, he, her, hidden, his, if, image, in, iron, is, its, it, its, kept, kind, lap.
Yeah. Okay, so the minute you have an alphabetic list, the other thing that it generates is the ability to read and repeat the words and to actually form other things from it. So one of the things we've been doing at the studio is, I'll do just a little section.
Sure.
This probably won't make any sense, but ancestors and animal arrived back before, buffalo boiling, burned, cave, cloth, companion, cooking, did discover, dog, dog dressed, dressed, died, earth, earth ends, face, few, finished. And it's not that necessarily what I just did becomes a poem, but all of a sudden there's a way to work with the rhythm of the reading to begin to make something else. And that is what I hope will become some of the public programming for the floor once it opens, actually, and is installed next summer. So how are you doing with your underlining out there? Yeah? Okay. You guys want to move over? Are you guys ready? The enthusiastic readers? I think just read it once and underline as you would remark without a lot of system. Yeah. Has anyone put a mark on a paper? Yeah? You have your marks? You're done? Okay. What about you guys back there? Yeah? Yeah, you look like no. Yeah? Okay. Nancy, do you guys want to come over here? Oh. Okay. You know that first image I showed of the underlined page? So here's a text, and I'm saying, with a pen in your hand, read through it and mark those words that come forward to you. Mark the phrases that have that appeal to you because of their sound sense, or because of their meaning, or because of the relationship of how two words sit on the page, or three. So it's very fragmentary. But it's like what you're doing is you're pulling your mark from that text forward to the surface to be read. And what we were going to do is actually go around and read it and see what kind of mixing of these three texts comes together from your reading. Is that clear?